follow that routine, and it sounds very much now, certainly it's been my own experience, that there is actually a lot more planning, a lot more strategizing has to go into a virtual event. And if you look at the critical path, there's a lot more risk elements where things can go wrong. And often, as you say, out with your control. You've been very honest and very transparent in saying you're not a tech expert.
Yeah.
You've had to learn a lot, but really you're not a tech expert in terms of maintaining and supporting these different platforms.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I found that last year as well, was that piece, as you said, Barry, about when you are venue side and you run an event, and it's just that kind of churn. And on the other side, whether you're a PA or an office manager or an MD or something, when you have that churn of face-to-face meetings and events, it's just, oh, it's the monthly meeting, or it's the this, or it's the team meeting, or it's that, and it's all very blasé. Whereas when we're putting things into the virtual space, we have so much to contend with, and we have so much outside of our control. So I remember making that comment to my virtual planner a couple of times last year when we were working on our first few virtual events. And I said to her, so much is out of my control. Normally I can oversee everything. I can keep a lid on everything. I can troubleshoot as soon as coffee's run out, right, get onto the menu. We need some more flasks over there, and send people to go and do this, that, and the other. And it's that letting go of that control. And that is also hard to learn. So it is very much a balancing act between what you're delivering and also what you're used to doing, as well as the expectations and the experiences that the client wants, and delivering on those, and ensuring. For me, my vision is that I deliver with my partners and with my team really brilliant virtual events, so that the clients are convinced that the virtual event has been the absolutely right thing to do. I want no element of doubt. And so this is why I'm championing this so much. And there are many, many factors why people will continue to attend virtual events in the future. And I think there is so much from consumer behavior, consumer habits, to access and travel and personal choice. Because as a parent, I have young children. So for me, I can't go to breakfast or evening events. So I haven't been able to in the last 6-7 years, because I've had children all that time. And so suddenly, if I can jump on to an event at 8 a.m. before I take the children to school, suddenly I can do that. Or if I want to get onto an event at 5, 6 in the evening with America and other parts of the world that are just waking up, I can. And it's fantastic. And why would I change that? I don't want to change that. And I want to continue doing that. And another thing that I want to say is that I've been very vocal about virtual events and my position and where I feel virtual events fit into every organization's strategy. But also I'm vocal about doing the right thing at the right time. So there will be a time where people will look at their calendars and go, that is a perfect fit for a virtual event. And that could only ever really be a face-to-face event. And I'm not anti that in the slightest. And my life, my passion, my career has always been face-to-face events. I just feel that there are a lot of people out in industry or outside of that who want to bounce back to events as they were. And the trouble is, those events are not going to be as they were. So suddenly that becomes irrelevant. What was before is kind of irrelevant in a way, because what we're being able to deliver as a live event is going to be a different experience. So there's a lot to think about. And I think it's about value, it's about budgets, it's about strategies, and constantly about what we're trying to deliver here, and who are the stakeholders, and what experience and what expectations do they have. And another thing I'd say is that for me, as I'm speaking to more people, is I'm learning every day, and is to have that understanding of where is this client's understanding of how this all works. And it's really important to come to that level and break it down for them and go, okay, so do you understand what live streaming is? Do you, and not without, absolutely not without trying to patronize or anything, but just to bring it to that level of understanding where they're comfortable, because a lot of us are anxious about this. And there's still a lot of anxiety about these virtual events because it's new and it is untested to a certain degree, and there isn't much evidence that will convince people until we get more and more of these events going, and we keep them going, because as a consumer of other people's events and networking and other things virtually, I know where I'm going to be spending my time, and most of it is going to be doing a lot of this virtually. And when it comes to the big social events and we can get together, of course I'll be there in a shot. But I think that naively expecting events to bounce back to what we historically knew is incredibly naive. And I think we just need to work through that with our venues and with our partners and with our clients and so on, and push through that. But we've got to be very transparent. We've got to be very open and very realistic.
It's an interesting viewpoint, Ruby, and I tend to agree with you. Now, I know some of our audience watching this, that last couple of minutes will have been quite painful to listen to. And particularly, those who've invested time, effort, resource into building up some of the amazing venues that we have around the country, don't want to hear the viewpoint that virtual meetings are here to stay and there will be a place. But, and it's a big but, I think we have to face reality. And as someone coming to things from the opposite side of the perspective, coming from the venue perspective, I quite strongly feel that life will go back to a version of normal, but we're not just going to go back to the way life was in 2019, 2018. Some things through choice and some things through necessity. I personally feel quite uncomfortable and quite anxious. Creates a bit of anxiety in me, the idea of going back to big face-to-face events, couple of hundred, couple of thousand people in a confined space inside a building. I can't see us going anything like that anytime soon. I just think it's not practical. Don't get me wrong, I'm thoroughly looking forward to getting out of the house and being able to get a haircut and go out and eat and let someone else cook some food for me. But the idea of being in a big convention with a few hundred or a couple of thousand people, I certainly don't feel comfortable with that yet.
No.
There is also, there's the choice factor in this. Your business has changed dramatically in the last year. My business has changed dramatically in the last year. If I reflect back in January and February 2020, I was a very reluctant user of meeting platforms and such. I would occasionally have a Zoom meeting with people if we couldn't get together. But I was dashing around meeting people face to face, driving 300-400 miles a week, spending a fortune on fuel. There's £100 a week isn't going in the fuel tank of my car. I'm not missing spending all that unproductive time sitting behind the wheel. And I don't particularly wish to go back to that style. I'll put it out there. I do not intend to go back to doing business the way I used to in the past. I will make much more use of the virtual opportunities to meet with people. Yeah. But from a meeting and events perspective, I think there's going to be a shift, but I think there's also an opportunity, because I think the days of a meeting for meeting's sake are over.
Oh yes, yeah.
And I think the kind of the regular weekly sales meeting or the monthly company get together or the quarterly divisional meeting, I think those days are over. I think those will happen virtually. But I think the opportunity off the back of that is that the less frequent, the maybe twice a year, 3 times a year physical get together will actually become much more important. Because if you're working as part of a diverse team, it's in our human nature that we want to get together. We want to meet face to face sometimes. So I actually think there's going to be a shift in the meeting market. It won't be like it was before, but there will be new opportunities there. And one of those opportunities that we've definitely spoken about is this hybrid event. Some people meeting physically, but others remotely coming and enjoying that meeting. And you've been doing a lot of work on that recently, haven't you?
I have. And just to touch on your point there about how, and I guess that sort of led from what I said earlier about the meeting for meeting's sake, and we've always done it like this, or we always have a monthly fill in the blank. And that bothered me when we did live events. It really did. And I, from a sustainability perspective, from the perspective about thinking about the planet or about consumption and all these other things that we did mindlessly because it was always done that way. And that old school mentality of you can't change it because that's something that we always do, and don't question it. bothered me back then, and it bothers me even more now. And so when we look at people going back to meetings and events live, that is also a slight concern, because I think there's the camp that they just want to go out. It doesn't matter what they do, where they go, who they see, they just want to get out there. And we see them all on social media and all the rest of it, desperate to get out there. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But what that means to individuals like you and I is we will question every meeting, every interaction. Can I do this virtually? Can I achieve what I want from it virtually? And if that's the case, then why would you travel and put yourself under stress when you get stuck in traffic trying to get there on time and all the rest of it, when actually it can be done virtually and you're sat at home and then you can pop out and go for a walk. So there are things that we need to consider in terms of our personal lives, as well as kind of how that affects the working day and the way the working calendar is scheduled. And so there is that part of things. And for me, I have always, one of my biggest whys in my business is to run events with a purpose, events for a reason. And that's why if you're one of my clients listening now, I'm always hammering, what's the strategy behind this? That's one of my favorite lines, is what's the strategy behind this? What are we trying to achieve? And again, I'm working on a proposal at the moment, and I've started to look at the costs, and they ran one virtual event last year. They want to run another one sort of early part of this year. But I don't have clarity on why they want to do this. Do they just want to do it for the sake of it? And I'm looking at the numbers and I'm going, I need to have a conversation with them about what is the purpose behind this? Because you've asked me to look at this. Now I'm looking at the numbers and I'm going, why? What is this leading to, and what's the strategy behind this? So I will have those candid conversations, because that's the kind of person I am. I'm very open, I'm honest. And if I think that event is not the right solution for that problem or that question or that query at the time, I will say, actually, you know what, we don't have a big enough database to mail out to, or the timing is not right, and we'll look at another solution. It could be that it's a marketing campaign or it's something else before the event comes along. So from that part, I'm open about how I work with my clients and when I would take an event project on. And so from that stems that kind of passion and that sort of the energy that I put into an event that does have a very clear purpose and does have a clear strategy. And again, when we can run events in venues, we need to make sure that those events are experiences. So they're social, or they are offering some kind of experience. And this is where event organizers and venues, our relationships will be even stronger and more solid, because we're thinking about creating something really special or really experiential or really immersive, because that's what people want. So when I mentioned kind of the two camps of people who are just desperate to get out there no matter what, there's also a group of people, and I think I sit in this second group of people, who will consider where their time is going, and they'll look at their diary and go, I don't need to go out to that. I'm not going to go out to that. I will attend that virtually, or I will take part in that virtually, or I will ask the person that I'm meeting, can we have this as a virtual meeting? And there'll be a higher, acceptance of that, I believe. And then that second camp will also want to attend events where it's really, really interactive, it's immersive, the social experience, and that experience, whether it's created at the venue or by the venue, will be something completely unmissable. And that's going to be really special, because I think that's where the organizers and the venues can really get their creative juices flowing, is that part, right? These people are coming together. How can we make this absolutely fantastic and so memorable? Because we all know, we've all been to really mediocre and worse events. We've been to events that we don't remember. I mean, we might remember something because we met someone there and that's it, but you don't remember anything about the event. You don't remember anything about that meeting. And there's been a lot of that. And I think so many of us now are questioning where we used to put our time and where we want to put our time going forward.
You're so right. I was just as you said it there, the thought was flashing through my head. I can remember the awards events and the annual dinners and the things that I've attended as an attendee or a speaker or whoever, but also the ones that I've facilitated, the ones that I've run in venues. And there are the ones that stand out, the ones that are memorable because somebody's really put effort and taken time to make it memorable, as you say, to make it an experience, as opposed to, you know, just that bland soup, plain chicken, Black Forest Gatto kind of. I mean, I used to hate serving up those because you just think, oh, come on, we can
Yeah,
do better than this.
yeah,
It's interesting, you know, you've shared with us there that you definitely see the way forward as being this hybrid type event, which will be in venues. You know, we're not for a second saying that venues are going to be wiped out, or, you know, should close up and change purpose. There will definitely be a place, but clearly it's going to be different. There's going to be different expectations from clients. There's going to be different expectations from you as an event organizer. You know, what are the key kind of, we talked previously about flexibility, but what does that mean when you said it's all about flexibility to me the other week? What does that actually mean for somebody owning or running a venue? Oh, I'm flexible, but what does it actually mean?
yeah. That translates to me as something. It's easy to say, yeah, you know, we're really flexible, you know, but what that needs to translate into is flexibility in the terms and the contracting of events, because as we've seen through this experience, anything can happen at the drop of a hat. So an event or a wedding or an AGM or a launch or a celebration or an awards night, that's months and months of planning. That's months of staffing, that's months of cost, whether it's your deposits or your event management time or your decor or whatever it is that you've invested in or have committed to up until a certain point. And then a restriction comes in and just wipes all that out. It's very difficult. And so there has to be an element of understanding between the venue and the organizer as to what's acceptable when it comes to having flexible terms in contracting, and being realistic around what can be done, because a lot of venues last year were incredibly flexible, and kudos to them for being so flexible and saying, you know what, yes, you can push your event by 6 months or a year or 18 months, or and venues have had to deal with just the worst time, as you said when you opened, Barry. It has not been easy, and so when it comes to that, I think that openness between the organizer and the venue is really important. So flexibility of contract terms, so that there is a commitment from the organizer, but also from the venue side, should anything come in that's out of their hands, that there is flexibility to turn things around or change things up or postpone. And then also that kind of working together, that working relationship now is going to be so much more important than it was before, because I really value the working relationships I have with my venues. And for me, I will generally go with the venue A, that fits the event, but B, where I get on well with that venue coordinator or that venue contact. It's all about the personal connection and that human relationship. And I cannot, and I'm like this with my clients as well, I cannot work with someone that I can't get on with. And so that venue contact, that relationship with the venue contact is going to be paramount now as we move into the world of virtual and, well, hybrid events. And again, working together, those two creative heads together could be so powerful to create such an incredible experience for the client and their attendees. So there's a lot to be explored, and I think that will come in time. And I'm really excited by what can happen. But also, my definition, Barry, of hybrid is not necessarily just one event that has virtual and live elements. It's also, and I've spoken about this in another interview with David Lee, that a hybrid calendar is what I see. So there could be that there's a virtual event and the follow-up is live, or that's a hybrid. Or it could be that certain elements, are delivered virtually, whether it's a training session or it's a meeting, and then the next thing is better suited to be a live event. So that flexibility in the calendar as well, and just going over those details of what needs to be delivered, who that needs to be delivered by, and what's who's paying for this, or how's this being covered from a financial perspective, and then just breaking it down and working out what works best for that organization. And what they want from it, and then also then how that integrates with other parts of the organization's activities. So how that comes into marketing and follow up and the process from there. So
it's a really interesting concept, looking at that hybrid program over a number of events. And I think summarizing what you've just said in the last couple of minutes, Ruby, and what we've discussed before, if I'm thinking from the perspective of venue operators, some of my clients who have venues who are wondering what to do moving forward, that relationship between organizer, if there's an agent involved as well, and then the venue rep, critical, even more so than the past. So the days of, it's Ruby and she's booking through Expetel and it's the usual, because we've all been there with a conference organizer. Yeah, we'll see you in 3 months' time, and just the same as last time. That's not going to wash anymore, is it? It's going to be detail. It's right. What is happening this time, and what do we need? The expectations and what event organizers like yourself need from venues is going to change. And you touched on terms of business there and such. And I drilled that down when we were talking recently into some hard facts. The days of the old type of event contracts with 90-day cancellation, 100-day cancellation, it's just not going to wash anymore. Now that in itself, of course, from a commercial perspective, as the venue operator, there is the danger that the venue starts carrying all the risk. So there has to be a recalibration there. And I guess, what's your feelings on? I see probably one of the answers there is there's going to be a much greater focus on things like event insurance, event cover, that force majeure term is going to become much, much more important. If a client decides that they're going to scrap their event with a week's notice, yeah, of course there should be penalty clauses in place. But if suddenly there's a local spike of COVID and the government or the regional authorities say, nope, back into lockdown, that's nobody's fault. I think I used to find as a venue operator that event organizer, the end client, not the event manager like yourself, the end client used to be very reluctant to invest in event insurance. I think that's going to have to become much more important and much more prevalent.
Yeah.
To share the risk.
Yeah. Event insurance, massive, very massive. And we've seen through the process of 2020 and beyond that the insurance side of things is so critical, and that there are massive changes needed in some of those terms there as well. But it's so important to have every event to look at every event as an individual event and as an individual occurrence. And whether you insure by event or you insure across the year, you have to ensure that those terms work for you for your events, because as you say, we don't want venues taking the full risk of that. It's not.
They won't be able to.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be like that, and they won't be able to, considering what they've been through. And so the very key thing for me is communication, and that has helped me. We were due to run an event last week as a hybrid event up until sort of just before Christmas. My client was being optimistic that we may be able to, and he wasn't to know. But after the Christmas shutdown, we had the conversation with the venue, and they were incredibly flexible. But what I think helped that was that I had constant communication from about March, April last year. And I said to the venue, look, none of us know what's going on. Let's just diarize a monthly catch up. Let's just chat and see where we are every month. Okay, I'll check in with you, you check in with me, and we just keep talking. And that's exactly what we did. And our relationship now, even though they missed out on this year's event because the venue is shut, is that our relationship is stronger. And it's also what this experience has done has humbled a lot of us. And we just sort of, all the airs and graces are put to one side, and we just communicate and go, you know what, we've just got to accept what's happening, and we just move forward and look to what we might be able to next year, and look at the opportunities that provides us on both sides. So
it's such a simple message, but it's such an important message. Just having that regular, open and honest conversation, and it's great to hear of, in most cases it's very positive stories that I've heard from both venues and from event organizers. There's one particular experience I know of, which I slightly had to get involved with last year, where I know that a very significant organizer venue relationship on a UK nationwide basis is broken, and it's probably broken long term, because that venue was the exception that wasn't being flexible, and even in March and April of last year was enforcing cancellation terms on a contract. And I mean, I know the organizer, I've spoken at this organizer's events before, I knew the venue as well, and I knew that some of the senior people at the venue and the company, I think the instructions were coming from corporate level. I'm fairly confident to say. But as a third party, I just looked from the outside on that relationship and thought, for heaven's sake, will you just talk to each other and have an honest, open conversation?
Yeah.
The event clearly is not going to operate. You can't enforce the contract on the organizer. They want to run the event, but they're not going to be able to. And unfortunately, I think that relationship is broken moving forward. Really short-sighted. As someone who consults and advises venues from the outside, that it didn't wash a year ago, and moving forward, it's just not going to work. That communication is going to be critical. Ruby, we could spend all day talking about this. We often do. It's been an absolute pleasure having you joining me today. Thank you ever so much for your time and a really fascinating insight. We often hear from people that are involved within the process, but to do a session like this with someone who is the event manager, the event organizer, at one end of I think it's really helpful for venues as a whole to hear that and hear the transparency and the honesty from you of, look, this is where we are and this is how it is and this is what we're going to need moving forward. I think it's going to be a familiar but a different world moving forward. Ruby, how can people carry on the conversation with you? Where can they find you to come and have a chat and talk about?
Sure, Barry. Yeah, I'm very active, very visible on LinkedIn. So Ruby Sweeney on LinkedIn, and I'm also in the usual places like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and also Clubhouse now as well. So you can find me there, and my website is theeventshub.com. And on the website, on the contact us page, you can fill in a form or drop me a Calendly invite to have a chat with me. There's a section there on a 30-minute chat. So happy to discuss anyone's kind of event issues or questions or just any nervousness that you might have around kind of virtual events. So yeah, you can find me in all those places.
Ruby, thanks ever so much for joining us. And I've got a feeling we'll do another one of these before too long. I think we'll be seeing you again soon. Thanks ever so much for joining us, and happy eventing.
Thanks, Barry.